Bill Gates did an interview with Rolling Stone, and it turns out he's not too big a fan of Edward Snowden. He said, quote, "I think he broke the law, so I certainly wouldn't characterize him as a hero. If he wanted to raise the issues and stay in the country and engage in civil disobedience or something of that kind, or if he had been careful in terms of what he had released, then it would fit more of the model of, okay, I'm really trying to improve things. You won't find much admiration from me." So what I notice here is the same thing I notice every time somebody goes after Chelsea Manning or Edward Snowden or Daniel Ellsberg or any of the other whistleblowers throughout history. They don't know what they're talking about. Like, they don't know the facts. And don't get me wrong, Bill Gates is actually a pretty good guy. Like, he's got this big program to give vaccines to third world nations to make sure that, we could try to eradicate these diseases that we pretty much have eradicated in the modern world, but they haven't in third world places yet. So he's a good guy, and I think he means well, but I honestly think he's ignorant on this topic. He's uneducated on this topic. So let's break this down a little bit. When he says, well, I think Snowden broke the law, so I certainly wouldn't characterize him as a hero, my response to that is, no, the law broke the law. The government broke the law, or I should say the executive branch broke the law. Now, that seems like a contradiction, right, to say the law broke the law, so what does that mean? Well, it's actually not a contradiction, because what I'm referring to is the Constitution. So if you pass a law cannot override the Constitution, which is the supreme law of the land. That's above just regular laws that would be passed by Congress. So when you have the Fourth Amendment very clearly saying that you can't, spy on everybody with one warrant, you're not allowed to do that, and then the government does that, well then Edward Snowden coming out and pointing that out and saying, whoa, 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 this law is illegal because this law is unconstitutional. This law violates the Fourth Amendment. So it's not Edward Snowden that's breaking the law, it's the government that's breaking the law. And then the argument is, well, wait a second, but he is mandated by law to not give away this information. But if the government doesn't have a right to tell him that he can't release information about the government acting illegal, then he should be allowed to do that. And that's the reality. Don't get me wrong, there are legitimate state secrets. Like, if somebody goes out there and starts releasing the nuclear launch codes to our enemies, of course that's something that they should be prosecuted for, and you shouldn't be allowed to do that. Are there legitimate state secrets? Absolutely. Nobody would argue that there's not. Another example, remember what Geraldo Rivera did a while back when he fucked up, he wasn't thinking? He drew the coordinates of U.S. troops in the sand on live TV on CNN, and anybody who was affiliated with the enemy could have just saw it on CNN and called them up and said, oh, they're right here. So yeah, that's another example of you shouldn't release that information. But the government has so perverted the idea of legitimate state secrets that they've fucked themselves over, because anything that is inconvenient to them, anything that would threaten their power, anything that would paint them in a bad light, they just unilaterally declare, well, this is a state secret now. Yeah, but that's not... Oftentimes, it's not in an area where it really is a state secret. It's something that the American people have a right to know, but they're withholding it because it would embarrass them, or it would show that they're acting criminally. So Edward Snowden was 100% right in doing what he did. And then when Gates says, well, if he wanted to raise the issue and stay in the country and engage in civil disobedience, that's a different story. Well, number one, he did engage in civil disobedience. That's exactly what this is. And number two, if he stayed in the country, he would have been thrown in jail for life. Or definitely for a very long period of time. How do we know that? Look at what happened with Chelsea Manning. Case closed. Here's somebody who is the textbook definition of a whistleblower, and they're like, yeah, fuck it, we're going to lock you up anyway. So you're telling a person, well, yeah, if you want to do that, you should be willing to spend your life in jail. Fuck that. You can do the right thing and then flee. That's what I would have done. Actually, I don't even know if I'm as brave as Edward Snowden. I don't even know if I was in that situation if I would have released the information to begin with. I probably would have been too much of a bitch. And then, I mean, when he says, if he had been careful in terms of what he had released, then maybe it would have been a different story and he would deserve admiration. But he was careful in what he released. That was the whole purpose of him going through Glenn Greenwald and him releasing it to 2 specific outlets. They actually sat down and went through the papers together and said, well, this one is a legitimate state secret. We're not going to release that. All right, this one's a clear violation of the Constitution. We will release that. So, look, man, Bill Gates, again, I think the guy means well, but he's ignorant in this respect. He doesn't know as much about, constitutional law as he should, and that's not his area. That's not his realm. I get it. That's more, my realm and the stuff that I talk about all the time. But if you don't know, you should have just told the interview, I really don't have an opinion. I haven't really formed it much, or I don't know all the facts yet, so I won't talk about it. But he did talk about it, and he made himself look a little bit silly.